Right, so I can see that there are still people joining, but we have, we will have to get started. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for joining the session on how to identify the right journal and build your researcher profile. So my name is Lucia Skumbi. I'm a senior customer consultant for research intelligence for Elsevier. I've been in this role for 9 years now, and I'm based in South Africa. So let me just get my slides moving. Right, so there are many questions about the webinar follow-up. So as you can see, automatically from Zoom, one day after today, Zoom will send out a message to you, and it will have a web address, a link, where you can find the recording, find the certificates, and also find the slides that I'm presenting today. So look out for this email tomorrow about the same time. It takes 24 hours before the email is sent out, and it takes you to a website that looks like this one. This one on the right-hand side is the website of last week. You can see that 2,556 certificates were downloaded, even though only 1,900 people attended. So there are more people downloading certificates than that are attending. So we will try to follow up and block those that are downloading certificates that are not attending. But you will find, if you scroll down, you will find info. You will find the slides and the recording, and also you can click on to download the certificate. Right. So this will come to your email automatically tomorrow, 24 hours from now. Also, before we get started, I want to remind you that we are busy with a series of Scopus webinars. So we are now doing the 4th one, the selecting the right journal. And then next week, not next week, the week following next week will be about the Scopus author profile. The Scopus author profile will be presented by my colleague, who's a senior product specialist with Scopus. It will be a good session. She's very detailed. She'll tell you everything you need to know about the Scopus author profile. But today we are in the 4th session that will be about selecting the right journal. So what we're going to do today is that we will first cover some general considerations, and then the process of how to identify the right journal will be first to consider the general considerations, and then to create a shortlist, analyze each of those journals in the shortlist, look at the journal metrics, what tell the journal metrics, and then also what resources are available. We will not be doing the break and the profile. We'll do that in another session. So to get started on this topic, the question that comes to mind is, why is selecting a journal such a challenge? And it is a big challenge for many researchers, especially emerging researchers. And the reasons are quite simple, because there are so many journals out there. There are more than 300,000 journals globally, according to Ulrichs, which is a directory of all academic journals. So of these 300,000 journals, not all of them are peer-reviewed journals. Only about 45,000 of them are peer-reviewed journals, but that is still a lot of journals. So it makes it very difficult to choose if there is such a big, selection available. On top of that, we see an estimated growth of about 3.5% per year. So the journal numbers are growing by 3.5% every year. And what we hear from every country, all institutions, is generally there is a lack of support for selecting journals, right? So usually you are dependent on your supervisor or your promoter or study leader to guide you in selecting a journal. But this is not always sufficient. I mean, this is a very good first step, but also sometimes academics, and everybody's guilty of that. They get stuck, or they get stuck on a specific, short list of journals, and they don't get to know the other journals out there. So it is important to learn how to select journals independently for yourself, and not always rely on senior persons within your department or your supervisor. That is not that the supervisor is not important, it's extremely important. So also please listen to your supervisor. This is just additional information to guide you in how to select a good journal in which to publish. So before we get started, there are some things that you have to take into consideration even before you start looking at the journal, and that is, what is the expectation of your publication? So if you are funded, if your research is funded, or if you are in a specific, research environment, there might be some requirements, such as there might be a requirement that the journal must be peer-reviewed. If it's not peer-reviewed, you will not be credited for the publication, or it must be in a specific index, it must be open access, and some funders and some research institutions even require that you have to use a specific archiving manner for your publication, right? So these are things to keep in mind before you even start looking for a journal, because this is some of the criteria when you look at journals to make sure that they comply with this. So, whether the journal is peer-reviewed, whether it's open access, and how can you basically archive, or how will they archive your article so that it remains visible and remains accessible. So some of the resources that are available for policies around publication is the Sherpa Juliet. It's a database of research funding organizations. So it tells you, if you are funded by a specific funding organizations, what are their policies and what are their requirements. Sherpa Romeo is another database, and it tells you what is the copyright and self-archiving policies. And then there's also Sherpa Fact, which is a tool to help researchers check if a journal in which they wish to publish, if it complies with the funder requirements, right? So the Sherpa set of databases are very useful if you have to comply with certain requirements of funders or within your research environment. So the first step in when you are trying to identify a journal in which to publish, and I must say I'm not going to stick with Scopus today. In the session that we're having today, is broader than Scopus. It is general, and then in the subsequent sessions we're going to focus more on Scopus and the journal metrics part in Scopus. So today I'm starting very broad and general. So there are 3 inputs into your shortlist, right? So we've spoken now that there are more than 300,000 journals out there. So you have to start with a shortlist, and a shortlist can be between 5 and 10 journals. But now the question is, how do you create a shortlist? And there are basically 3 ways in which you can do that, or a combination of these 3 ways. The first way is to analyze your own references. So I'll show you an example here. So this is a manuscript. This is a real manuscript. The title of this research is Changing Meaning of Home in the Work of South African Women Academics During the Pandemic, right? So it's to do with higher education, with academics. It's to do with COVID-19, the pandemic, and now how to start looking for possible journals in which to publish. And analyzing your own references is the first step. So this is the references that this researcher used, and you can see in the red are those titles, journal titles, that the researcher has used in in the references. So these are the referenced journals. And if you analyze them, if you look at, so which of these journals did I reference the most, then you get to a short list. So there will be a short list. Here's a short list of 5 journals that this researcher referenced quite a few times. So this is Studies in Higher Education, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Higher Education, Gender, Work and Organization. So this is already a start of a short list, which is based on the references in your manuscript. So your own references that you used is the best clue of where you should also publish. So the saying goes, you publish where you read. And this is exactly what this means. So just going back, the second way of creating your shortlist is to get input from colleagues. So colleagues could be exactly those that I've mentioned, your supervisor, senior researchers, your study leader, any senior colleagues that have experience can also advise you about where to publish. So now you've got 2 ways. The third way is to do a literature search on your topic and determine which journals are most prevalent, right? So this is where Scopus comes in. So you can do a search in Scopus using your topic and then note which are the most prevalent journals. So I will just show an example of how you would use Scopus in this way. This is what we did in the previous session when we talked about literature review, exactly the same. So this is the Scopus homepage. I'm going to find a previous search that I did, say, under my saved searches. Let me just find, I can't remember which one I wanted to use. Let me just see what I've got here. Right, so here was one that we did previously, Morocco and coronavirus and vaccination. I'm just using this as an example. So this is my topic. And to find a short list of relevant journals, I would run my search. So what you would do from your side is you create your search. This is just going back to the homepage of Scopus. This is how you would look for your search. Now I've lost it. Let me just see if I can get back to the homepage, edit. And then basic search. Oh, it doesn't want to take me back to that, but you would do your search using the fields, article, abstract, and keywords, or just the article title. Here's another example, deep learning for brain segmentation. I want to use my example, so I'm going to select the one that I saved. I've got 389 results. And when I see my results, I can go to analyze search results so that I can find a list of the top journals. So top journals in this sense means that these are the journals with the highest volume of articles on the topic, right? So documents per year per source. So I'm clicking on this window, and for my search of this is about vaccination in Morocco for COVID-19. I can see that there are a number of journals, and the top, maybe the top 5 or 6 journals will be your shortlist. It can be added to your shortlist. So here we've got Pan-African Medical Journal, Annals of Medicine and Surgery, and you can see, so they've published the highest number of articles on this specific topic in this journal. So these are relevant journals for your topic. So this just tells us something about the number of publications that they have on the topic. It doesn't tell us something about the quality of the journal. So we'll come back to the quality of the journals. But before I go back to that, I just want to continue with an overview of the shortlist, how you would go about the shortlist, right? So this is what I showed you exactly. You do a search. This is the search. This is the example that we already have in the slides. It's about home, women, academic, and COVID. Only 16 results there, but if you look at the journals that have published on this, we've got Gender, Work and Organization, Academic, Medicine, Radiology, Frontiers in Education. So here you also have a short list, but not many documents published because it is a very small research area. Right? So basically, what we've done now is we've looked at 3 different ways of creating your shortlist. The one is using your own references, asking a supervisor, or doing a search in Scopus, or a combination of the 3 to find relevant journals. Now the next step is, now that you've got your shortlist, is to analyze the shortlist based on this decision grid. And there are many things that you take into consideration when you select a journal. So this looks overwhelming, but we'll do it one by one. So you have to think about the legitimacy and the compliance of the journal. You know, what is the status and the quality of the publisher? Is the journal indexed? Is it accredited? In some countries, you have accreditation, so only publications in certain journals are accepted. You must also make sure that the relevancy of the journal is right. So does it cover the specific topic that you are thinking of or your manuscript is about? What is the aims and the scope of the journal? Does it match your manuscript? You have to look at feasibility also. So what is the chances for your manuscript to be published in this journal? So each journal on your list, you have to look at these factors. So I'll show you how you can see which countries are publishing in a specific journals. Are there any local authors publishing in that journals? This is important because if your manuscript is aimed at local authors, if you want your Moroccan colleagues and peers to read your publication, you must also, you know, have some indication that local authors are reading and publishing in that journal. That also makes it more feasible. And then also cited by, not South Africa, but by Moroccan authors, for example. So you can look at who's citing the papers in that journal. And next thing to consider is the quality of the journal. So what is the cite score? So remember, the cite score is the average number of times an article is cited in that journal. That's the cite score. Similar is the journal impact factor. It is also an average number of times that an article in that journal is cited. Then you get to duration. So before you send or before you decide where to send your manuscript, it's good to have an idea of the acceptance rate of that journal. So if the acceptance rate is 1%, your chances are quite low of being accepted in that journal. So, you know, try to find information about the acceptance rate. We'll do that online in a minute. And then also, how long will it take for the editor to make a decision, or for the editorial board to make a decision? To have that in mind before you just, you know, go ahead and send your manuscript. And then also some of the open access options. So very often now researchers are compelled, or they are required to publish open access. There's a fee that is charged for open access. It's called the article processing cost. So make sure whether open access is available for that journal, and also what is the fee that will be charged. And if you don't have funding, but you want to have your article open access, you want to make it readable for everyone, whether they have a subscription for it or not, you can ask for a waiver. So you contact the journal editor and ask if it would be possible to waive the article processing cost, right? So for each of the shortlisted journals, you will look at legitimacy and compliance, the relevancy, the feasibility, the quality, the duration, and the open access options, if that is relevant. So just to go a little bit deeper into each of these points, I will show you where you will find this information, right? So looking at legitimacy and compliance, you can go to Scopus, for example. So this information is in Scopus, also in other databases like Web of Science and the Directory of Open Access Journals. Is it indexed? Indexing is usually within Scopus or Web of Science. Is the journal listed in an accredited list? So if you have an accredited list, you should check whether it is in that list as well. Then it's important to also take cognizance. We talked about this last week. Is the journal predatory? Make sure if you are not using a Scopus journal, it's important to also make sure that that the journal is not predatory, right? So we talked about this last week. I'm not going to repeat all of this, but there are definite characteristics that will give you an indication if a journal is predatory. Unfortunately, you will have to go to the journal website and check yourself whether it is, whether it shows any of these characteristics, whether it has fake addresses, misrepresentation of the editorial board. If it is unprofessional looking website, that doesn't make it predatory, but it does raise a red flag. You will also look out for things like, information sharing. Is the editorial decisions, how they are made, is it clear on the website? Are there any aggressive solicitation of the, from the publisher's side, like in send us your article, we will publish it in 24 hours or 48 hours. That kind of thing is not, is definitely unethical, right? So there are also lists. We discussed it last time. Unfortunately, there's no one single list, but there are quite a number of lists that include information about predatory journals. Right. I'm not covering this topic again. We talked about it last week. I also referred you to Think, Check, Submit, which is a good website to guide against predatory journals. In terms of indexing services are predominantly Scopus and Web of Science. Google Scholar is not an index. It is basically a search engine which uses harvesting of academic literature. So be careful if a journal says it is indexed in Google Scholar, because it's not really an index. In terms of relevancy, you find this information in Scopus. I will show that online, how to do that, as well as the aims and the scope you will find on the journal website. So that's where you check for relevancy. It's also important when you look at the journal website to make sure that you recognize, you carefully look at the aims and the scope. And the aims and the scope will tell you very explicitly what kind of articles the journal is wanting to accept or to receive, right? So this is an example. The top journal is called Work. It says very specifically in the aims and the scope that the journal is an international journal. It publishes high quality peer-reviewed manuscripts covering the entire scope of the occupation of the occupation of work. Right. So this is quite it's quite broad, but it goes on to explain in detail what kind of illnesses and casualties it will cover, right? So a lot of details usually provided in the aims and the scope. The second one also tells you very explicitly it is a theory driven. So if your manuscript is not theory driven, you have to move on to the next item or the next journal in your shortlist. Also says that it has an international scholarship. So if your topic is very local, it won't be matching. It wants to have a good conceptual development. And if it does not comply, your manuscript will be declined. So also look out for in the aims and the scope what type of research the article or the journal wants to receive. So there are, the different types of research, from applied to exploratory, descriptive, action research, policy orientated. So you have a clear indication in your mind where your manuscript falls in, and look out for clues on the websites where that might, there's an indication of that it is matching. Okay. The aims and the scope will also give you information about the type of manuscript that it will publish, right? So whether it is a full article, which is also sometimes called an original article, also letters and short communications or rapid communications. So often it is necessary to get your publication out very quickly in a shorter format. If it is very important breakthrough science that you want to make available as quickly as possible, you can use a letter or short communication. The journal will also give you an idea of whether it publishes review articles, case reports, etc. So look out for all of these information in the aims and the scope of the journal on its website. The website will also give you information about the audience that they want to reach. So it will ask, it will ask questions like, is it, or it will mention on the website that it is for theorists or that it is for practitioners. It will also, you should also take into consideration how technical is your language. Is it, relevant for a general readership? Is the research too country specific for a journal? Are the journal readers experts in several subjects? So then you target more a multidisciplinary journal. And then otherwise it could be, transdisciplinary. If you could aim for a general audience if it's transdisciplinary, like science and nature, and then more specialist, very specialist, specialist but multidisciplinary. You get journals like New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of American Chemical Society. They are specialists, but they have a wider audience. And then you get also journals that are very single discipline audience, like this strange one, Journal of Knot Theory and its Ramifications, very specific subject that it covers. So look out on the website for the audience. When we get to feasibility, it's important to also, or try, I'll show you how to do that in Scopus in a minute, but try to get a sense of who's publishing in this specific journal, right? And then the quality as well. I will look at this online, take note of the site score and the journal impact factors. So what is the average number of citations that the journal gets, to give you an idea of the prestige of the journal as well. So we'll get to journal metrics later, the impact factor. We're going to do that in another session, and the site score as well. So I think I will just go online now and show you. Yeah, before I get there, I just also wanted to mention that it is, I mentioned this earlier, so the submission to acceptance duration. Before you select a journal, it is useful to also have in your mind, how long are you going to wait for a response? So journals often have this information on their websites, not always, but they often do. So they will, for instance, give an indication of you will get a rejection within 4 to 6 weeks. So that is quite a short turnaround time. It can be 2 weeks as well. So 4 to 6 weeks after submission, you should get a notification from the editor whether they are going to send it for peer review or not. The peer review part can be up to 4 months and much longer. So there's a very wide variation. There's no set standard. It depends a lot on the journal and how many submissions they get. So the more popular a journal is, the more submissions they get, and the longer the period becomes here. You can also just take note of what is the schedule. So, that will also give you an indication. So if they are publishing a large number of issues per year, Is it continuous, or are they publishing only a certain number of issues per year? And then you can check in Scopus or in a database, you know, do the issues actually appear on time? You can use the website of the journal also, because they usually have the most recent articles available, and you can see how quickly it has been published, right? So all of this gives you an idea of the duration of the process. Then some journals often fast track options. They have a fast track options, especially for short, brief, or rapid communication. This is usually breakthrough science. That doesn't really happen very often, but I just wanted to mention it for the sake of being comprehensive. So check the website for all of this kind of information. If they don't mention it specifically, sometimes on the PDF of the journal articles, you can see when it was received, when it was accepted, and when it was published. And from that, you can also make a deduction. Right? So peer review is a long process. So this 4 months is not even long. That is a very normal average, you know, duration after it has been sent for peer review. And then obviously you get feedback from the peer reviewers, and then you have to make changes and send it back. So the whole process could be definitely more than a year. So this is the whole process of peer review. I'm not going to go through this, but you can see for yourself that from, you know, submitting your paper to identifying the journal, and then sending it for review, the possible rejection. So the whole process is a very long, drawn out, complex journey. Open access information is usually on the journal website. So I will show that when we get there. So let me just go back to my Scopus example. And we will first then look at how do you, from this point, so we're working with this example of the pandemic and vaccination. We've got a number of journals, but what we can see in Scopus, when we analyze the search results and we look at the documents per year per source, remember we got year by clicking on Analyze Search Results after we did a search. So that was our search. We clicked on Analyze Search Results. It takes us to an analysis of the search results by different aspects, but here we have the journals, the sources. Click on that, and now we can see, so the one that had the most articles is the Pan-African Medical Journal, but this doesn't tell us anything about the quality of this journal. So to find out more information about the quality of the journal, we can either click on this one here, compare the sources. I'll do that. So now you can see the quality of the journals, right? So you can see the Pan-African Journal. So this is the one in blue. Actually doesn't have a very high site score. In fact, if you hover on this, the site score is 1. So 1 citation per article over a 4-year period. In 2020, it was 0.8. But there are other journals in this group. So the Annals of Medicine and Surgery has a higher site score, 5.1 citations per article. And then the best journal amongst the shortlist there is the Journal of Biomolecular Structure and Dynamics. Right? So this journal has a site score of 5 in 2020. And in 2021, it was 8.2, which is quite a high site score, means 8.2 citations per article over a 4-year period. So when we go back to our analyzed search results, just keep in mind that what we see under the sources here is the volume of publication, not the quality of the journal. To find the quality, we go to the metrics, or we can click on the journal itself. So let's go to the Journal of Pan-African Medical Journal. I'll just select the top one here. So you can see this is an open access journal. So in Scopus, you can already see a lot of information about the journals. You can see it's open access. It's well covered in Scopus over a long time, but unfortunately it doesn't get a lot of citations, right? So the citations, the cite score is 1. That is the average, is 1 citation per article over a 4-year period. The Scimago journal rank is normalized. So a citation is weighted by the quality of the journal where the citation is coming from. And so it is mostly lower quality journals that are citing this journal, because 1.0 is the global average, and this is way below 1. So this means that the quality of the journals that are citing this journal is not that high. Another metric that tells us something about the quality of the journal is the SNIP, the source normalized impact per paper. And what this metric does, it also normalizes for the subject area. So it basically says that what is the average number of citations that this type of journal would receive in the subject area, and it normalizes the citations for that. Right, so the normalized metric is also below 1.0. What we can also find from the source details of a journal in Scopus. Remember, we have our shortlist, and now we are looking at each of the journals on our shortlist to see what more information can we find about this journal. In Scopus, this is what we can find, mostly metrics. We can also go to the homepage of the journal, and an interesting information, what you will find is if you look at, when we count the citations for every journal, we show this on this journal metric page, on this journal sort of profile page. So it shows you up to date, there has been 3,389 documents to date published in this journal that is indexed in Scopus. Now, what is interesting is that you can actually go and look at all of those articles. Now you're looking at the articles from a journal perspective, and again, you can analyze the search results. You can see that's my favorite feature in Scopus. Because if you analyze that now, oh, there it goes. You can see who is publishing in this journal, right? So you can see so our topic is actually quite Moroccan, because we had Moroccan. So you see a number of Moroccan organizations here. If you scroll down, so these are the Moroccan institutions that are publishing in this journal. You can also see the authors and the documents by country, right? So if you have a journal that is, our search was now is a bit misleading because it has Morocco in the actual search as well. But you can see from this that the journal publishes actually a lot of articles from Moroccan authors, and next then Nigeria, Tunisia, South Africa. So your authors that are publishing in this journal is quite, there's a large numbers of them are coming from Africa. So this is also, of course, the Pan-African Journal, I think, if I remember the name correctly now. So I'm just going back to that page now. But for any journal, you can do this analysis to see who is publishing in this journal, where are they coming from? Because that gives you some indication of the feasibility of you matching the profile of the journal. Okay, so let me just go back to the journal page. And the same you can do also for the citations. So you can if you click on this, remember this is on the journal page, the source details page, you click on the number of citations received up to now, analyze that. If you click on analyze, okay, so Scopus has to work very hard now to make this visualization. And then you will see, so who's citing articles in this journal? So the citations are coming from the US, Nigeria, China, UK, Ethiopia, India. Okay, so this also gives you an idea of how dispersed, how diverse the authors are that are citing this article. It gives you more insight into the journal. Right? So this is what you can learn from Scopus, but you can learn some information only on the website of the journal. So I'm jumping now to another example. I've got the example here. This is actually an Elsevier journal. It's the Asia Pacific Journal of Sports Medicine, Arthroscopy, Rehabilitation and Technology. It's also an open access journal. This is the website of the journal. And to, as I mentioned before, very important to go to about and look at the aims and the scope of the journal, because it will tell you very specifically what they want to cover and how they want to cover it. So sports technology, a whole description of the type of research that they cover in this journal. So you will have a lot of information to use to match your study and see if it is relevant for this, for this journal. Other than looking at the aims and the scope, that's the most important thing to look at in terms of how relevant is the journal and what is your chance to be accepted. Remember, if you send it to the wrong journal, you waste a lot of time. So it's better to do this work beforehand. Check the aims and scope, make sure it's relevant, it matches. Besides that, you also need to do all the, the checks for the journal quality, which I'm not going to do now because we basically covered that last week. But I also wanted to show you that many journals have information about the duration of the process. So this one tells you that they have a 14 weeks review time, and you can find more information about that in the insights. So that's the average number of weeks it takes for an article to go through the editorial review process, including standard and desk rejects, right? So 14 weeks is the standard time, and then it gives you more information, for instance, on the impact. So you've got the site score, but we've got that already in Scopus. And now you've got information about the speed. So review the speed. And here you can see the number, in weeks. So this is giving you the weeks of how long it will take. So in 2022, the first decision came after 10 weeks and the final decision after 14 weeks, right? So many journals have this kind of information on their website. Some unfortunately don't. And then you have to look at the actual articles to try to find on the article if there's any indication of when it was accepted and when it was published. I want to get back to so very important to go through the website thoroughly and check all of this information. And then I just want to get back to my slides for the summary. So on this, you can see what I usually use when I have to evaluate, when I have to support somebody in finding a journal, which I don't do really anymore, but this is how I would have done it. So I've got a decision grid. I've got my shortlist. In this shortlist, I've only got one because it doesn't fit on the screen, but you'll have all your shortlisted journals, right? And then you have a grid where you go to who's the publisher. Is the journal indexed? Where is it indexed? In Scopus of Web of Science. Is it accredited? What are the subject areas that are covered? Does it match my subject? What are the aims and the scope? Is it theory-driven, empirical, data link theory? You know, what is the methodology that they want, that they prefer? What is the author country? Use Scopus, look at the publications, analyze the results to see who publishes in that journal, who cites that journal. And then you can also look at, this is all about the authorship. And then, and the next slide, it continues. There you go. I also look then, this is still Gender, Work and Organization. It's the name of the journal. I checked the cite score 3.5. This is the average number of citations. The journal impact factor is very similar. This journal did not give any information about the acceptance rate. You know, is it 5% or 10% or 51%? But they did give information about the duration of the process. So on the website, I found that they take about 6 months, and the first rejection will come after 25 days. So, you know, for your first response, you will have to wait 25 days about. It does have open access journal. The cost of the open access is about $1,500 to $2,500 US. This is a very average price, and I didn't check for the waivers. So this is a decision grid that you can use when you are, you know, choosing a journal that is suitable for your manuscript, and you use this decision grid after the first. Let me just get, after the first step, sorry, I'm just going to scroll up. The first step that you took, which was to select your shortlist. So this is still your starting point. You select your shortlist, and then you create your grid. I just took you through all of the steps one by one before I came to the summary grid. And you have to look at all of these aspects of the journals to make a clear decision. And usually after you've done this once or twice, you don't need to do it again. You will have it in your mind. What are the things that I have to look out for when I choose a journal? Right, so my final slide is everybody wants to publish in high impact journals that look like this. They're all shiny and big and very posh, but it takes time. We all start, when we start publishing, we start very humble. We cannot always select the top journal. So also in your whole decision process is is to be realistic in terms of not aiming for the top journals, but aiming for the most feasible journals. So you're not going to look at impact factors of 20 or cite scores of 20 above if you are just starting out. How realistic it is to publish in that journal. But as you go along, you will eventually get to the top quality, high impact journal. So be patient, you will definitely get there. And I want to share also with you some resources. So these are going to be in the slides. The guide for authors. This is a website of Elsevier, which is also, you can download it. It gives you a very thorough overview of the things that you must take into consideration when you submit your manuscript. And then also the Elsevier journal finder. If you specifically want to publish in an Elsevier journal, they will help you. This website will help you find a suitable journal. You copy paste your abstract in the field, and it matches, it uses the fingerprint technology to find a journal that matches your abstract. These are some other tools that you can also look at that guide you to how to make a decision. There's also information on Researcher Academy. There's a webinar that was recorded that you can also follow up on. And with that, yes, thank you very much. I have reached the end of my stop sharing. Right, so let me see. Unfortunately, we don't have Tureya today to do the questions, but I will just see if there's anything. So most of the questions that I see here is about the attendance and about the access to the slides. Okay, so I would suggest that if you have problems to download the certificate, is to go into this, into the website of Research Academy. So you go to Research Academy, and there is an option there to just see if there's an option for a query for support. So at the bottom of the screen, there is a support button. So you click on the support button, and there will be an option for you to ask a question. So you will have to very clearly say what the date is and the name of the webinar that you want more information on, right? So on Research Academy, go to the support and ask your question. Okay, so unfortunately, we can't answer all your questions one by one because we have thousands of attendees. So please go to the support within Researcher Academy. So there's an interesting question about the quality of a journal. If you send it to a high quality journal and the journal evaluates decreased, does it mean that the article also, yeah. So that is quite an interesting question because the site score and the journal impact factor are averages, right? So it doesn't tell you something about every single article. It could be that the article quality is very high and was very well cited. So unfortunately not. The site score and the journal impact factor are just averages to give you some sense of the quality of the journal, but it is not definitive for sure. But thanks for that question. You can definitely select a journal on your shortlist if it's at the bottom, because it's not about the position, it's about how does your journal match across all the different facets that are in your decision grid, right? So it doesn't help that the journal has a high impact factor, but it is low in terms of not meeting the aims and the scope. It doesn't match the methodology, or it's never, or doesn't really cater for authors or for readers that are based in Africa, for example. So it's important to look realistically at the journal across all the factors in your decision grid. So yeah, there's another question about an electronic journal submission, and it says with editor for more than 4 weeks. Is that normal? It's very normal. So at least 12 weeks, it could take up to at least 12 weeks. So it's important to be realistic about how long it takes. 4 weeks to 12 weeks is more or less what you can expect, I would guess. There's a very big range in the journals, but 4 weeks is quite normal. Right. So there's a question about the difference between the impact factor in Web of Science and the site score in. We're going to have a session that is very focused on journal metrics, no other metrics, only journal metrics. So I'm not going to get into this, except that for now I can say that the difference is very slightly in the methodology. It differs, slightly. And then the other big difference between the two journal metrics is that the journal impact factor only considers Web of Science journals. Site score only considers the journals that are in Scopus. But both are averages. So they take the number of citations over a number of years to calculate the metric. But we have that session coming up on the 28th of March, journal metrics. So please join us again there. I'm going to share the decision grid. It's in the slide. So when you get your email tomorrow, it will have a link where you can download the slides. I hope it's going to be useful for you. I think that's it for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I look forward to seeing you again soon. So until that time, I just wanted to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you again for joining us. Remember, we have another session, not next week, but the week after, and then the week after again, journal metrics. So I'll see you there. Thank you very much, and au revoir. Bye-bye.